All right, hey everyone. Thanks for all the positive feedback in the last video. We're back today. I thought we'd talk a little bit about double majoring in music, between music and something else. In my case, that was studying jazz piano performance at the Eastman School of Music, and I'm wearing my shirt today, and studying political science or international relations at the University of Rochester. So yeah, I thought I'd talk a little bit about my experience double majoring for anyone who's curious and anyone who might be thinking about doing it themselves. It is different. If you decide to go forth with it, I think you will have a positive experience. There are a few caveats, and there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. So yeah, here we go. I think the first thing that I thought of when thinking about this video was kind of obvious, but you should really be passionate about whatever things you're choosing to study. The benefit of being passionate about both of them is that they become breaks or reprieves from one another, right? Anything you do, you're gonna get burnt out by it if you're really going for it. But I think music, it's a special type of burnout. Up to music school, you might have talent that's kind of taking you or carrying you. But once you get to music school, no matter which music school it is, you're gonna run into people who are way more talented than you, like literally physically more talented than you. Either they have better ears, they're able to do things technique-wise that are just unbelievable. Those people exist. But at the end of the day, even for people like that, you still have to practice. A lot of it, it is a skill. So yeah, you need to be willing to put in the work. Along those lines, one of the things with music is that, you really will fall behind. Like, you need to put in a lot of work. There certainly are people who end up double majoring who you get the feeling they need to focus more, or they need to do something differently to put in some more time. And you run into that question of whether or not you're going to do one thing well, or do two things kind of okay, or do two things really mediocre and not very good at all. I think to a degree that is true. I will say though, for me, I look back at my undergraduate experience overall, and I'm pretty content with it. I enjoyed it. I think I got a lot, as much as I could, out of doing both things. And by that, I mean, musically, I got a pretty good amount of calls or gigs, people asking me to play for their things. Yeah, ensemble-wise, I did fairly well. Have no complaints there. I was playing at a pretty high level. With regards to studying political science, I did most of the things I wanted to do. Internships, like interning for a senator, interning for the district attorney. I was a social worker for a little bit. I was in student government. I was able to do the things in kind of both worlds that you want to do if you do study either of those majors. And I think the main reason why I was able to do that is because I was really doing those two things all the time and really not much else. Again, it's this idea of these are both breaks from one another. And it kept me from burning out from either. When the majors do kind of become a break from one another, at least in my case, I was practicing a ton, right? Like anyone does. And when I was pretty close to losing my mind and burning out, like you will, I would do this other thing I'm really passionate about, which is learning about government. I would read those several hundred pages of dense, dry, uninteresting academic term papers about whatever political economy of whatever country. And then once you're about to lose your mind with that, I would go back to practicing, do that for a few hours, exercise a different part of my brain. And that's just kind of the way it worked for me. It didn't really feel like work. It really did feel like I was taking a lot of breaks all the time. If you haven't seen the other video where I talk about why I became a journalist, It'll become a little bit clearer to you the way I view these two subjects. If you haven't checked that out, you might be interested in it, you might not be. It might help inform whatever I have to say. Lifestyle-wise, my schedules were usually pretty awful, to be honest. It was, having class from like 9 or 10 in the morning, whether that's at the university or at the music school. You go from that, you'd have maybe 2 or 3 of those, and then from 3 p.m. you'd have ensemble, and then you go till probably like 6, and then from 6 to like 7 or 8 you have another ensemble, and then from 8 to like 11 p.m. you've got all your extracurricular ensembles and stuff like that, which that's the fun part of music school, right? It's like you get playing in those groups. It's not so much the actual school part, to be honest. It's playing in ensembles, which is the really rewarding part. So yeah, like it was a really busy day. Like oftentimes it was several cups of coffee, like 3 or 4. So 1 in the morning, 1 at 12, 1 at 3, and then possibly 1 at 6 or 7 to like get me through the rest of the time. And then, once 11 hits, you gotta read. You gotta read your political science papers. At least for me, it was political science. For another subject would be another subject, right? Mentally, it wasn't exhausting, but I think physically I was pretty tired a lot. Usually going on break, I was very tired. But again, mentally, I didn't feel close to burning out. I think musically, definitely there were times where I was frustrated, but everyone is. One thing that you're gonna have to think about is that you will have to spend more time in music than the other major. And there's several reasons for this. I think one of the reasons why is because music school really relies on personal relationships. You're going to want to be closer friends with your peers at music school. And the reason why is that, in something as subjective as music, a lot of times you're going to be asked, you want to get asked to play in projects, right? With your friends. That's really the rewarding part. It's not the school ensemble. It's not, to a degree, yes, it's the teachers, but the more lasting relationships is with your peers. So you want to develop that, and really the only way to develop that is by being there and being present. And that's one thing that I definitely spent one thing that I really struggled to balance. I spent most of my time at the music school. I didn't hang around at the university too often to develop too many friendships there. But at the music school, you need to. It's just the way it is. Well, one of the things that you might be surprised by that you do have to worry about is what your teachers think about you double majoring. If you are double majored, there's kind of a stigma to that. Kind of like you have one foot out the door, you're not fully committed to music. That was definitely an attitude about me that I was fighting for most of my time at music school. I will say that most of my peers, people my age, my friends, they weren't like that to me. It was just whether or not you can play. But definitely among, older people, the teachers, that was a thing. Like it straight up, it was a thing. When you audition, you probably shouldn't mention it, to be brutally honest. I hate to say it, but you should probably not mention that you're wanting the double major. Yeah, so for me personally, I came in as a double major. I knew that that's what I wanted to do, but until my 3rd year, I was pretty set on becoming a professional musician. That was my plan, just like everyone else in my grade who was in music school, right? But for me, I definitely knew and was very conscious of how much I was putting out that I was a double major. In fact, most of the time I was downplaying it, downplaying my interest in the subject, because I knew that if people thought that I wasn't committed, then I wouldn't, what my peers would have done, it's hard to say, but I did know that teachers wouldn't give me opportunities to be in ensembles or, higher level ensembles. I knew that those would be taken away from me, and in fact, they were taken away from me. So you need to be aware of that. You know, it sucks, but I'm just letting you know that's a thing. Well, I guess going along those lines, I think, you know, if it's something you're interested in, the double major thing, I think it is wonderful to do. And there's many reasons why I think that. First of all, if you're going into music, the way the world is, it benefits you to have a broad perspective. It benefits you to be plugged in to what, frankly, non-musicians think of the world. And obviously getting an education beyond music is extremely valuable, learning about whatever subject it is, as long as it's not music. Reality is most people in the world aren't really thinking about music as much as music school students are thinking about music. So, you know, remaining kind of in touch with the rest of the world, I think is really beneficial. For me, you know, having studied government, you know, I firmly believe that politics is strongly intertwined with music. So it helped me, you know, knowing what's going on in the world to have something to convey in my music. It informs my music. It also, you know, it changed the way I view performers and musicians I looked up to, knowing their history, knowing what's going on in the world around that time. Obviously, if you don't study history or politics, that's not going to be an experience you have. If you study like mathematics, I don't know how you'd see it. I don't know what connection you'd see, but I'm sure you would see something. And you know, if you do, like, certainly let me know. You might be really good at like, I don't know. Well, there's a lot of technology in music. Maybe you'd be really good at making those connections more than, you know, you'd be better at engineer work than any of us are. Oh, well, I will say this too. I think, you know, having those 2 degrees, having a music degree and having a international relations degree, I think it does certainly, it's an unusual combination, right? I think it certainly helped me get into journalism school. I'm definitely kind of not very typical. And I think for me as a journalist, it certainly helped me report on a lot of different stories. You know, I can be artistic, I can be abstract, I can understand that mindset. And I can also be very technical, I can be very academic and dry. I can understand that mindset as well. And you know, I think that doesn't just apply to journalism, it applies to all sorts of different fields. I think, you know, interning in political offices, it definitely helped. When I was a social worker, it definitely helped relating to a whole bunch of people. And you know, musicians we are very creative. When you're not amongst musicians, you also realize that musicians are very creative. And you know, if you're interested, at the end of the day, if you're interested in it, if you're interested in 2 things, you should go for it. If you're looking for a backup plan, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But if you're able to pull it off, you are a much stronger person than I am. So if you're even thinking about pursuing music, you're doing it because you love it, right? You already think differently than many other people do. If you're interested in another subject, you should by all means pursue it. I have a great teacher of mine who says, you know, even if you don't go into music, we need more musicians in whatever position. So if you're good at a lot of things, if you put in the effort, if you study a lot of things because you're curious about it, genuinely curious about it, we could use some more musicians in industries around the world. I think it'd make the world a much better place. So with that in mind, you know, I hope this helps. I don't mean to be dark about it. This is, you know, it's just my experience. Some things to consider. If you have any questions about music school, you know, if you're considering it, feel free to ask them in the comment section below. Feel free to message me as well. I would love to help out and advise you in any way I can. I don't know how helpful I'd be. And then, yeah, we can do a follow-up video at some point answering some of those questions. Yeah, I'm available to help. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. Thanks, guys.